Crystal, and welcome to my kitchen. Well, it's finally Friday afternoon, the end of a long work week, and I couldn't be happier. I'm ready to just work on some of my own personal projects and relax and enjoy the weekend. Hopefully you are too. So let's start that off by having a glass of wine with our cooking. Cheers. Oh, I love a nice dry red wine. And today, with my cooking, I'm having a glass of the Graziano wine, the Enotrial label, the Barbera. Remember, I opened that 2 days ago to make a different recipe. And actually, I think I opened it to put some in the eggplant lasagna sauce. So today's the last day to use that wine. And while I'm using the wine in my dish today, I'm also having some while we're cooking. And I want to tell you about what we're going to make. I'm really excited to share this recipe with you. Today, I'm making venison stew. Yes, you heard me, venison stew. So, some friends of ours from the marina gave me this beautiful venison roast. Thank you so much, Pat and Joy. Pat went hunting on the family farm and got that deer late last fall. And I'm really excited to make this venison stew. The recipe is a little complicated only because there's a few different steps and there's quite a few ingredients. So I'm going to break it down for you step by step so that you're not overwhelmed and you'll be excited to try it yourself at home. First, the base recipe that I'm using I got from the website www.allrecipes.com. It's called Venison Stew. I'll show you here. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, you can see I have a lot of notes from making it previously. I have made a lot of notes for myself so I don't forget to do those modifications this time around. So let me get you started. What we're going to do is first I'm going to rinse the venison meat and I'm going to cut that into bite-sized cubes. Then for some of the other ingredients, we need to do some prep work. Basically, what we're going to prep is I've got 3 nice turnips. I'm going to peel and cut those into bite-sized pieces. I've got a couple of potatoes, and you can see from my bowl of potatoes, they're starting to grow little sprouts. But don't worry, these are still good to use, and they'll be perfect for the stew. So I'll just cut those little things off and peel them and cut it up. I have a yellow, medium-sized yellow onion that I will dice up. Then it calls for some mushrooms in the recipe. I only have 3 left. If you remember, I put some mushrooms in my other video earlier this week when I made my leftover Easter ham quiche. Well, so I've got 3. We'll use them. And then we had some leftover peas from a couple of our other recipes that I made the videos for. So I'm going to use the rest of that packet of frozen sweet peas, and you can see here I'm defrosting them on the plate. My mom gave me that trick. And how do we start the stew? So the first step is we need to have some bacon grease. I don't have any bacon grease, but I have a little bit of diced frozen pancetta. And so I probably have about a half a cup here. So I'll start the stew by browning the pancetta with a little bit of extra virgin olive oil on the stovetop in my Dutch oven. And this is a Dutch oven that's 4.75 quarts. I wish it was a little bigger. It's going to be filled to the brim today. Maybe I'll end up getting a bigger Dutch oven. But so first we're going to saute the pancetta, and to that then we will roll the venison cubes in an all-purpose flour. It's okay to use your bleached flour for this. I roll the cubes in flour. I'll add that to the pancetta. Then I'll add my diced yellow onion, and then let the onion brown. And then I'm going to mix up a little mix of, see my little stuff here. I've got 1 big elephant clove of garlic. We're going to need about a tablespoon of this tomato paste. And then we need, I think, how much of this anchovy? A teaspoon of anchovy paste. Anchovy paste is really amazing. You will not taste anchovy. When this is cooked, it almost tastes like butter. And a little tube of this you can buy at the grocery store, and it'll stay good in your refrigerator for quite some time because it's airtight. And then once we add this mixture in a bowl, we'll add it to the stew. And then we will add the broth mixture. And the broth is 1 cup of beef broth, 1 cup of chicken broth, and 1 cup of red wine. So I'm out of beef broth, but what I do have is I always keep different flavors of Goya powdered bouillon in my cupboard. So I'm going to use 1 little packet of Goya beef bouillon with 1 cup of water. So that'll be my beef broth. Then for the wine, I've got the leftover wine, the Barbera. I have just about a cup of that left. So I think this is going to come together. And then there's a few seasonings. It's 2 bay leaves and 1 teaspoon of ground thyme and a little pinch of salt and a little bit of pepper. So I've just mixed up my spices here in a little dish. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to start prepping these other items and then we'll be back. Thank you. Okay, we're back. I rinsed and diced up all the meat. I peeled and cubed the potatoes and the turnips. And I forgot to tell you that we're also going to put carrots in the stew. So I have probably I had these baby carrots and I just cut them in half. And I've probably got about 1.5 cups of them in this bowl with the potatoes. I have the turnips on a separate plate because I find that the turnips need a little bit longer to cook than the potatoes and the carrots. So now I'm going to brown the pancetta. I already preheated my oven to 300 degrees, and I'm going to go ahead and brown the pancetta in my Dutch oven here on the stove. Add a little bit more oil. I'm using extra virgin olive oil to do the browning. Okay, there we go. We'll just go ahead and put that in here. Turn the heat up a little bit, kind of like a medium high. So I'm just going to brown that for a couple of minutes, and then and while that's getting started, I will start tossing the meat in the flour. And this will help us brown the meat, but the flour that we're tossing this in will also serve as a thickener for our stew. So it's kind of dual purpose here. And again, I'm not using my good bread flour for this. I'm using my all-purpose bleached flour. You don't need your good King Arthur bread flour for this dish. And I'm just tossing it so that all sides of the meat get coated. One of the nice things about venison is that it is so lean. I mean, if you look at this meat, look at that. There is like almost no fat on there. It is so much healthier than beef per se. But of course, it has its own distinct flavor. If you've never tried it, it's a little bit hard to explain, but I encourage you to give it a try if you're able to get some. Where we live here in New Jersey, I don't usually see this in the supermarket. It's really only if you have a friend that hunts or a family member that hunts, and they share it with you. Okay, let me check my pancetta here. Okay. The pancetta is starting to brown nicely, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add the first round of meat to the pancetta. And we're going to, like I said, we want to brown the meat, and then I'll remove the meat from the pan after it's browned for the next steps. Okay. I need a little more flour in my bowl here. Alright, here's what I'll do. This is the messy part of the process, but let me tell you, once this gets going in the stove, in the oven, and your house starts to smell like the flavor of the stew, oh, it's so nice. And then when you taste it, I hope you'll try this at home. I love it. And I made it for my husband, and he loved it. And actually, I've only made it once before, this venison stew recipe. And when I did, we had a few friends over, Ian and Karen, and my good friend Tony, who also loves to cook. And it was Ian who gave me the idea to use turnips in the stew. And I thought that was a great suggestion. We all enjoyed it. It's really a shame that because of the coronavirus, we can't have all of those folks over for dinner this time to enjoy the stew with us. But we'll look forward to doing that with them once it's safe again. Let me just check the meat. Not browned yet. I'm going to turn it up a little bit. And I think I'm going to add a little bit of extra oil. Okay, I'm just making sure I get it all coated. That was kind of weird to stir the meat with my left hand since I'm a right-handed person. But making do here. A little more flour. Okay, and then the last little batch of meat. Now, as you're browning the meat, it's going to stick to the bottom of your pan. There's no way around that. But that's okay, because when we add the broth, and we bring the broth up to a boil before we turn it down and then put it inside the oven, that process will help get all of the bits off of the bottom of the pan, and those bits are so delicious. Oh yeah, it's already starting to stick. That's okay. I was anticipating that. I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit too. I think it needs to be a little hotter. Yeah, that'll be good. And we're not trying to cook the meat all the way through here in this stage. We're just really trying to like brown it a little bit. So it doesn't have to be all the way cooked through. Just, all right, now I'm just going to scoop this batch out and I'll put the next batch in. So I'll keep doing that until the meat's all brown, and then we'll be back for the next step. Okay, I finished browning all the meat. Now I'm going to do the next step. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of additional olive oil to the pan. Then I'm going to add the diced onion. Okay, I'm going to brown that. And then once that's just been in for a couple of minutes, because the pan is pretty hot. So once that's in there for just a couple of minutes and starting to brown, might add just a little more oil. Okay, I think we're ready to add the tomato paste, garlic and anchovy mixture here. We're just going to let that cook for a minute or two. Don't forget, when you're using anchovy paste in a recipe like this, it just dissolves and it will not taste fishy. It kind of works like a butter, and it'll give your stew an amazing complex flavor. So don't be afraid to try it. It'll be like a secret ingredient, and people will be wondering how you made your stew taste so yummy. And now it's like a dark red color. I'm going to go ahead now and add the broth. This is going to be amazing. Okay. Now I'm just going to stir it gently to mix everything. And then the heat from the stove, along with the liquid, is going to allow me to gently scrape the bottom and get all those little bits up. And we want all of those in our stew. We want every little last morsel of flavor. for just a minute. This is a nice time to take a little sip of wine. My broth here is now starting to simmer, and it's easier to scrape all the little things off the bottom. And I can smell the wine flavor, the wine, I can smell the broth. I can't get everything scraped up just yet, but that's okay. I'm going to turn the flame off. I'm going to add the herbs. Okay. Then I'm going to add the meat. Actually, I should have turned that off. I'll leave it on while I add those things. And I want to make sure it's at a simmer before I put it in the oven, and then I'll turn it off and stick it in the oven. Okay, I wanted to show you what it looks like before I add the meat back to the pot. Look at that nice dark wine color. And you can see there's little black things. That's from some of the stuff coming up off the bottom of the pot. That's all fine. That's part of our flavoring. And it smells wonderful. Okay, next I'll add the meat back to the pot. Okay, now I'm going to add the meat back to the pot. And I want to be careful as I'm doing that because I don't want to splash the broth and burn myself. So I'll just use these tongs here to do it, ever so gently. I wish I had a bigger Dutch oven. My goodness. I'm telling you, this is just barely going to fit. And I'm just counting on the vegetables cooking down so that I can get it all in there. Okay, put that in. See? Okay. Now I'm just going to give it another little stir. Okay. This is going to be so good. Oh my goodness. Wait till the husband comes home and he smells the house with this cooking in the oven. That's going to be a fun surprise. Okay, and now I'm gonna try to get all these turnips in. We'll see if they fit. I may have overestimated how much turnip to use. We'll see. Might not be able to get it all because I don't forget I have to keep room for my potatoes and my carrots. I had a piece of turnip that escaped there under the stovetop. Okay. Stir these in as best I can. Yeah, I definitely need a bigger Dutch oven. Now that I'm remembering, last time I made this, I think I borrowed my friend Tony's Dutch oven, and I made 2 batches that were identical. I used his and I used mine. Maybe that's what I forgot about. That's why I'm a little off with the quantity, but that's okay. I'll make it work. I might just leave that quantity of turnip out and I can use it for something else. I'll just put it in a container and put it back in the fridge. Plus, you never know how big the turnips are before you get them. Okay, I think that's ready to go in the oven. Okay, and I'm just going to put it on the top rack of my oven with the lid on, and I'll set the timer for an hour. And then we'll wait for the next. I wanted to show you what the stew looks like after 1 hour of cooking. Look at that. It's just a nice consistency. And at this point now I'm going to add the carrots and the mushrooms and potatoes. And there's just barely enough room. And then what I'll do is I'll put it back in the oven for another hour. Okay, the stew has been cooking for 2 hours now. So I just took it out of the oven. I'm going to stir it up, and then I'm going to add the peas and cook it for another half hour. Look at that. The consistency is beautiful. It's The flour is thickening the stew just as we wanted. And when I stir up the, oops, when I stir up from the bottom, look at that, it's just gorgeous. I'm gonna take a knife and just check the big vegetables to see how they're doing. Oh yeah, that's one of the turnips, they're done. And the carrots are soft too, perfect. So now I'll just add the peas. Oh, a few rolled off onto the top of my stovetop. I'll stir those in, and it's gonna go back in the oven for about another, I'm gonna put it in for maybe 35 minutes or so, and then it'll be done. Finally, I think the stew is done. I took it out of the oven after cooking it for about 2 hours and 45 minutes or so, and I stirred it up, and now I just want to show you what it looks like. Look at that. It's beautiful. It's got a nice consistency. It smells divine here in the house. The meat has been tenderizing with this style of cooking in the Dutch oven. And venison is a meat that if you don't cook it properly, it's easy to cook it in a way that the meat gets tough very quickly. So this method really helps make it really tender. So I'm gonna go ahead and try it now. It's still really hot. It's still a lot of steam coming out of the bowl, as you can see. So let's see. It has a wonderful flavor, and the meat is really nice and tender. The vegetables are not overcooked. They're just right. So I hope you'll make your own venison stew at home and enjoy making the recipe. If you liked my video, please give me a thumbs up, and also please subscribe to my channel. Have a good evening.